what do you expect to see? What are you looking for in the next little while? As you mentioned, there's a PC lead. The NDP seems to have moved into second place, or so the polls would suggest. So now Kathleen Wynne has got to fight for her life. Doug Ford needs to hold what he's got, I guess, and Andrea Horwath seems to have momentum. So what will you be looking for these parties to do as you kind of observe this election and then have to report on it? What are you anticipating?
Right. Well, I mean, I think Doug Ford to date has run sort of very much kind of a front runner's sort of campaign and has been very careful and disciplined and as we talked about, limited his exposure to the media. In some ways, anyways. So it'll be interesting to see that if his poll numbers do sort of continue to sort of soften a bit, is he going to sort of change tactics in any way, and perhaps be more sort of critical of the Liberals, or pivot and sort of take aim at the NDP. I think from a journalist point of view, I think it's an interesting situation now, because I think until this point, the media has sort of been focused on the narrative of, a Liberal government, marked by various scandals over the last several years, and a new Conservative leader who's taking aim at that Liberal government, but himself has a lot of sort of issues, I guess. And is new to the political scene. So that's sort of very much, I think, to me, has shaped kind of the media narrative. And in a sense, I think the NDP has kind of been left out of that until this point. I think maybe now you're going to start seeing, certainly if these kind of poll numbers continue, you're going to start seeing more of a focus by the media on the NDP. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. Today, they've run a pretty positive campaign, really promoting their own policies. Whether they start going more negative, seeing that they might have a chance of beating Doug Ford that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think they're gonna start playing for the win, because I think they're anticipating that some of that progressive vote, some of that anti-PC, anti-Ford vote, could potentially coalesce around them, as it coalesced around Kathleen Wynne last time. So the Liberals have spent, by the way, I have to say the NDP dodgeball ad, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, it's great. Yeah.
I thought that, I got a kick out of that one. And Horwath has said that in this election, the choice doesn't have to be between bad and worse, which is how she characterizes Wynne and Ford. But I agree. I think we're going to start to see people putting the NDP in their gun sights. The problem, if you're the Liberals and your budget and what you're running on looks a lot like the NDP's platform, pharmacare, dental care, child care, details differ, and levels and what's covered differs, but they have a problem. I think that, what do you go after? You're going to go after Horwath personally? You're going to go after, like, what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Kathleen Wynne a few weeks ago, and she, she more or less admitted that they have moved, considerably to the left, and a lot of their policies are very similar to the NDP. But she still sort of tried to portray the Liberals as the centrist party. She said, Doug Ford is all about helping, his corporate friends, and the NDP thinks that business and free enterprise is evil. We're somewhere sort of in between and more reasonable. And so, I mean, it's possible that she's going to sort of, expand on that sort of notion, I guess. But as you said, it's difficult when they have, in terms of their policy planks, their budget, they have sort of positioned themselves so far to the left. It's hard then to sort of claim to be the party of the center.
It is, and from Doug Ford's perspective, we see him. We had him as a guest on this show during the PC leadership process, and he had a laser-like focus on Kathleen Wynne and the Ontario Liberals. Andrea Horwath launched her platform some weeks ago, and Doug Ford's statement was about Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals. He didn't mention the NDP or their leader at all. How how hard is it going to be for him to shift and start to talk about why voting NDP is a bad idea? Because, and I'll say this, there are parts of the province where the Liberals just don't play. There's part of southwestern Ontario and parts of the Niagara region, parts of the north, where it's going to be a PC NDP fight.
Right.
So while Ford and Horwath are taking turns hitting the piñata, which is what Kathleen Wynne has become, their local candidates need their leaders to help them out, right? Because New Democrats, like Wayne Gates in Niagara Falls, for example, I have no data about that riding, but he comes to mind, where the PC numbers are quite strong in that region. So he's not worried about beating the Liberal there. He's worried about beating his Conservative challenger.
Right.
So can we expect, do you think, we'll start to see the leaders, Ford and Horwath, kind of start to take more shots at each other? You see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly inevitable. You know, certainly if the polling trends we've seen in the last couple of days continue, I think that will definitely happen. I mean, I don't think it would be such a difficult adjustment for the Ford campaign, because I think they could level sort of many of the same kind of criticisms they have of the Liberals at the NDP in terms of spending and taxation and that kind of thing. I think that'll happen. I think Horwath would have to be somewhat careful in sort of going really negative on Doug Ford, because I think part of their appeal has been sort of the relatively positive nature of their campaign. I sense maybe the people are somewhat drawn to that, so I would think they'd have to be a little bit careful, but I think it's inevitable that she will start taking more aim at Ford.
Of course, we've seen it done before where the party leader, I mean, Dalton McGuinty was great at this. He stayed very positive, but he had various attack dogs and various kind of people in his caucus and party spokespeople that were not only negative, they bordered on nuclear. But he himself was never on television at night trash talking the other side.
Right.
But his people were.
Yeah.
So we could see that as well. I don't know who the designated attack dog would be in the NDP caucus, but
I'm not sure.
I suppose they could find one.
I mean, just seeing the stuff that has come out from the NDP war room, and it tends to be more aimed at sort of critiquing Ford policy as opposed to anything more sort of personal in terms of going after individual candidates or Ford's character or stuff like that. I mean, it's been relatively sort of sedate, I guess, in terms of going after the Conservatives. I mean, that may well change, but so far they've been somewhat sort of restrained.
All right.